Okay, what are we going to do with this monstrosity that we've already got here? Well, the best way to solve a problem like this is going to be to select everything and then hit the delete key. So now we actually have a clean slate. Let's go ahead and create something that makes a little bit of sense. So I'm going to create my first block here. I've got a step, I've got a transition, and I'm going to rename this step System, and I think I've already got this, something that I can use in there. So let's jump in and let's see. I don't see it in there. I thought I did have something. Let's try and pull this down. Nope. Strangely enough, whenever I deleted those, it looks like it took everything right up out of my tag database. So that's okay. I'm going to call this standby. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to create another step, and we're going to call this step operation. Then we will come down here, create another step, and we will call this one alarm. And then we will come down here, and actually I'm going to create one more step off here, and I'm going to put this up above. So let's go ahead and drop that there, drop everything else kind of down below that, and then I'll just go ahead and wire those together. Okay, so this first step, I'll go ahead and call that one off. So now we go from off to standby, from standby to operation, from operation to alarm, and now we've only got 4 steps generally defined. So operation is actually going to encompass one of 2 different possibilities. That would be either fill or drain. Alarm is also going to encompass 2 possibilities. So that would either be low, low, or high, high. So we've cut out some of our excess. And this is a little bit more useful. Actually, I'm still not thrilled by having 4 steps because this is still going to be very organic. So I'm actually going to go ahead and change my mind about alarm, and we'll just incorporate that into operation or standby, one or the other. So now we have 3 steps. We know that from off, we're always going to go into standby. And from standby, we do have a couple of possibilities. So let's go ahead and replace that single branch with a double branch. And we can wire this right up to the off. So now we have 2 possibilities coming out of there. And then from operation, we know we're never going to go back into standby. The only place we're ever going to go from operation is going to be off. So now we have that possibility. What we don't want is, the way this looks right now, we've got a wire that runs straight up through our blocks, and that certainly doesn't look good. So I'm just going to drag this bar somewhere down here and try and put it somewhere that it looks kind of not terrible. So I think that's fine. We can see that this transition and this transition run down here into this common bar, and then it wires all the way back up to the top of off. So that actually works for us. And from this, we're not going to program out the entire system, but let's at least go ahead and define some basic things that are happening. And we want to, program something here and then turn around and make it work. We want to see how this thing goes. So when we're in the off mode, we really only have one option that's going to get us going, and that's going to be the start button. So let's go ahead and create start_btn, and yes, that's still in our database, so I don't have to recreate that. So leaving standby, we have 2 possibilities. We are either going to be shut off or we're going to go into operating mode. Now for the shut off, that's easy because that's going to be the stop button. That's the only thing that's actually going to take us and put us into the off mode. So I can just put our stop button right there. That hasn't been created yet, so I will go ahead and do that now. That's going to be a Boolean, and I want that in my main program scope, so let's go ahead and create that. And it says failed to create a new tag. Tag name is empty, because for some reason in here it's not populating that for me whenever I go to create the new tag. So let's go ahead and just punch the name in there, and we've got our stop button. And I'm going to copy that stop button tag out of there because that's also going to be my transition here. So now I've actually got the stop button taking us back to our off mode, and I'm going to just create that off tag as well. Let's create our standby tag while we're creating tags, just to get rid of some of these X's. There's our operating tag, and now the only thing we've got is this transition here doesn't actually have a condition. So we need to create some kind of tag or an expression like an equivalency statement. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a tag that says operate. That seems simple enough. And I think I just wrote sparate. Let's try operate. That looks a lot better. And I'm going to create a new Boolean of that as well. So BOOL, and of course for some reason it's going to make me type everything out in here also. And let's put the scope to the main program, create it. So now I've actually got a structure that's filled in. Couple of things I'm going to have to do is, one, I need to go through and populate all of my actions. Two, I'm going to have to create some logic somewhere which is going to energize this operate bit whenever I want to transition into operation. So for the time being, I'll come back to that. For now, let me go ahead and start creating some of these actions. So this action is going to take my system mode, and it's going to set it equal to 0, because that's what off looks like, and we want to end that with a semicolon. And I want to copy that expression out of there, and I want to be able to use that just as easily here. So let's create an action. I'm going to paste that in, and only instead of making it 0, we're going to make it 1. Something else though I'm just noticing is, from operation, we do actually have one more possibility. We could potentially go to standby, because if we have our alarm conditions buried in operation, then whenever somebody resets the alarm, we want that to take us to standby. So that being the case, I'm going to have to go ahead and delete this transition, come back up here and create a divergence. And this one will still be our stop button. So I'll go ahead and just fill that in. And this one will not be as simple as just our alarm reset button, because we're actually going to need to make sure that we're in an alarm condition and somebody pushes the reset button. So let's say alarm reset button and alarm exists. And now we're going to need to create that tag, so I'm going to go ahead, double click and copy it. Now I will create the new tag, and oh, look at that, this time it populated that for me. How nice. So we'll take a bool of that, and then we will need to do the same thing for alarm reset. Again, we're going to want that to be a bool. Hit create, and so now only if somebody hits the alarm reset button and an alarm exists will we be transitioning out of here and going back up to standby mode. And then if somebody hits the stop button, no matter what the scenario, we're going to come back up here and go into system mode off. And let's go ahead and get this back somewhere out of our way. And you know, it looks terrible like that, and I don't really know where else I can put that's going to make it look much better. So I'll just leave it there for now. But you know, even with such a simple little process as what we're doing now, you know, you can see that these wires are already kind of getting a little bit unruly and hard to manage. And there's really not a way in this application to drag those and reposition the wires, you know, where you would actually want them to go. So that's just kind of a limitation of this software and this programming paradigm as well, because these things do become unruly. So at this point, we can go ahead and put some different actions in here. I'm just going to, for the time being, do something generic. I'm going to take our system mode of 1. We know we're going to want that to be something from 2 to 5, but for the time being, I'm just going to give it a 2. So again, we're just making this a really simplified version of our system so that we have something that we can actually run for the time being, test out, and see what it does. Don't be worried that, well, we're not getting deep enough into sequential function charts. I want to see more about how these things work in a real system, because when we get down the road, when we're in Automation Builder, we're actually going to be, spending a lot more time with this, going a lot deeper. I don't want to bury us in hours and hours of 5,000 instruction, because you can't practice with it in most cases. You can't simulate it after the fact. So if you create a space shuttle, you're not going to be able to see if it'll actually get you to the moon or not. So we're going to keep these simple for the time being. So just don't worry, because down the road we are going to get deeper with this paradigm as well. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and break. And when we come back, let's try to run this thing up and watch it work. And if I've got any bugs in there along the way, then we'll try to squash them. So let's take a break, and I'll see you then.